In this video, I'm going to help you bounce back from failure. Failure is one of those things that we all fear, isn't it? Who doesn't fear failure? Well, one thing that we have to realize is that when we fear failure, we also fear success. Because you can't have success without failure, and you can't have failure without success. The two are one. They're two sides of the same coin. But what happens when we actually fail? We feel like we're stuck. And it's a good word to use because we are stuck. And how can we bounce back when we're stuck? There is no bounce. We're simply, and we're stuck, right? Bouncing back is, right? So why is that? Why do we get stuck? We get stuck because we get stuck in the past. We get stuck in our head, right? When people say they're stuck in their head, they're stuck thinking. They're overthinking the failure. They're overthinking the failure, and overthinking will make you stuck. When you're overthinking, you are stuck, especially when you're thinking about the past. Because what do people usually say? This person's stuck in the past. So if I'm overthinking things, if I'm overthinking my failure, and I'm thinking about my past failure, right? Because usually we say, I failed. And then I failed. I failed, meaning it's past tense. It's happened. And now I'm thinking about the failure. I'm thinking about how I failed, right? Something in the past. And as long as I'm thinking about the past, I'm stuck in the past because it's not here and now. Of course, the failure happened, but then it's gone. It's done. It's over. But if I continue to think about it, then what I'm doing is I'm recreating that failure. I'm reliving that failure. I'm making all my decisions based off of that failure. It's like it's still there, still alive. Like I said, I'm recreating it. So we can't bounce back as long as we're stuck in the past. In order to bounce back, we have to be present. We have to be here and now. This is where the bounce happens, is in the here and the now. The stickiness happens in the past. We get stuck to the past, stuck in the past, stuck in our memory. And as long as I'm remembering a past failure, I'm stuck in the past. And it's not going to allow me to bounce back. Bouncing happens here and now in the present moment. This is where the action is taking place. If I'm stuck in the past, then I'm usually thinking and I can't act. I can't respond. So we have to see this, that in order to bounce back from a failure, we have to, one, become aware when we're dwelling on it. We're, I would have done it this way, and this, and that, and making excuses, and this, and it's unfair, blaming other people, right? We can't do any of that stuff. I mean, we can do it, but it doesn't help. That's not bouncing back. That's just being stuck. And the longer we just continue to dwell and stick and to that failure, then we're just finding ourselves more and more stuck. And this feeling of being stuck seems to drag on and on and on. And it's a very unpleasant experience because I'm literally just suffering from something in my memory. I'm becoming very unhappy because of something that has happened. Right? So now I'm taking that failure and I'm recreating it here in the present moment. I'm bringing a failure from the past into this present moment. And if I'm making all my decisions based off of a past failure, then I'm going to be recreating that failure in the future. Or I'm now so attached to that failure. I'm not free from that failure. I'm attached to it. I'm stuck, right? Attached. I'm stuck to that failure. It's when I get so overly identified with that failure. Oh, I'm such a failure. I'm a failure. I failed entrepreneurship. I failed business. I failed my parents. I failed myself. I failed my family, right? I'm becoming overly identified with an experience, and that experience was failure. Why can't that experience simply be experienced? And now that's it. Now bring on the next experience. It's when I get overly identified with that failure. Here's the big failure. Crumble, crumble, burning. Now I get attached to it. I get identified to it. I stick to it. And now that failure kind of goes back here into the past, but I'm still there with it. So you see, it's when we identify with the failure, when we attach ourselves to the failure, when we stick to that failure, that's what creates the feeling that we're stuck, because it's very much, that's exactly what it is we're stuck to it. So one is, if we actually have a failure, is the failure in our lives, and whatever it may be. Here we're talking about business. So when there is failures in business, one is not to get identified with the failure. You are not the failure. Failure is an experience, but you are not the failure. So when we create this negative self-talk that many of us have, you're such a failure, you're an idiot and a failure, right? Then I become identified with it. I start thinking about how big of a failure I am. I start being a failure. Well, what does a failure think? It starts thinking negative thoughts. Well, what does a failure feel like? It feels like a failure. A failure, if I identify as a failure, the thoughts of a failure are usually about failing. The feelings of a failure are usually feeling like a failure. The actions of failure is probably more failing. So you can see how we don't want to be overly identified. I mean, I shouldn't even use the word overly. We don't want to be identified as a failure. That's what keeps us stuck to it. When we can just simply see that the failure is something to be experienced, very similar to success, right? Success comes and goes. Failure comes and goes, right? It's just another experience that's coming and going. So that's one. Another tip is to become aware of when we are remembering that failure over and over and over and dwelling on it, right? When we're so stuck in the past thinking about it, we're recreating it. It makes us feel very paralyzed because there's nothing that we can do about that. If I failed yesterday, right now, today, there's nothing I can do about it. It already happened. But if I'm thinking about how what we'll do is we'll think, oh, but it should have happened like this, or it could have happened like this, or here's an alternate. It's like we're dreaming up, we're imagining another possibility that seems to not be experiencing the failure, that seems to not include the failure. If only I did it that way, then I wouldn't have failed. But what's the point? It's already done. It's done. Simply just move on. That's what bouncing back is. It's moving on from that failure. It's bouncing back, right? Because if that's all I'm thinking about, then I can't be. If I'm just focused on the failure in the past, well, that means I can't be focused here on the present moment. There's even more chance of me failing again, actually. Because anyone who actually achieves success, experiences success, they're usually very focused. Have you noticed that? In order to succeed in anything, you would have to be focused. There, successful. I pour tea in my mouth. Why? It's because I was very focused on pouring tea in my mouth. If I wasn't focused, I would have hit the microphone, spilled it all over my computer, and then break my computer and then said, I'm such a failure, right? I was focused on drinking the tea. If I was focused on the failure that happened yesterday, then you can see that I might have hit the microphone, tipped it, dumped the tea all over me. That's what I mean, is when I'm focused on the failure of yesterday, I have even more chance of failing today because I'm not paying attention to right here and now. I'm not focused on here and now. So when we are so focused on our past failures, we start to, 1, feel like a failure, 2, start to create more failures because we're not focused on here and now. So don't identify with the failure. Don't be the failure. And don't continue focusing on the failure that has happened in the past because it's happened. It's not here and now. If it's not here and now, it's very unreal. It's just a memory, right? It's in the past. It's a memory now. Why are we so focused on our memories instead of just what's here and now? Here and now is when I can take action. It's the only place to take action is here and now. I can't take action in the past and I can't take action in the future. The past is dead and the future is unborn. The only place that I can take action is here and now, the present moment. So that's what feeling stuck really feels like. It feels like I'm just like paralyzed because I'm actually in my mind, I'm stuck in the past. And in the present moment, I'm not present. I'm absent. And when I'm absent, I can't take action. I'm not here to take action. Where am I? Well, I'm in my mind, stuck in the past. And what are you asking in this video? How do you bounce back? How do you bounce back? Bouncing back requires me to bounce back in the present moment. But I can't bounce back in the present moment if I'm actually absent from the present moment. And where am I absent from the present moment is because I'm actually stuck in my head in the past. So you see, they're two opposites. You're either stuck or you're unstuck. When you're unstuck, you can bounce. When you're stuck, you stick. And what sticks doesn't bounce. Right? So don't identify. Don't focus on the past. Or you can say shift your focus from the past to the present. And when you shift your focus from the past to the present, well, now you can focus here and now. And what's here and now? Now you can act. Right? So for my own personal experience with failure, I had 3 businesses basically at the time. And one kind of went under and it seemed to drag all of them. And this was a big failure. This was a big failure. There was a lot of money. I was in a lot of debt. There was a lot of relationships that were lost. There was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, uncertainty, unhappiness, letdown, struggle, suffering, stress. I think I said that. Disappointment, frustration, aggravation, all of that. Huge, right? Just felt like everything just collapsed, right? Everything just crumbled, right? But again, I didn't get overly identified with the failure. I didn't start thinking that I was a failure, right? It's seeing that, oh, okay, well, all entrepreneurs, all successful entrepreneurs, it's seeing these truths that help you realize this stuff. Every successful entrepreneur has failed. At some point or another, they've failed. In every success, you can find failure. And in every failure, you can find success. So simply just find the success in the failure and move on. Because it's that success that you find in your failure that's going to help you create more success. If all you find is failure within failure, then you tend to just create more and more failure. So I didn't get so identified with it. I didn't dwell. It happened very quickly, like felt like it came out of nowhere kind of thing, where it was just took about two months of just going from like cash flow being cut down in half month over month over month. It was on that 3rd month that then it's like, okay, got to do something. I can't just keep on, here's the downward trend. Can't just keep on riding this one. Right? It's basically month 3, there was panic mode. Okay, it's sinking now. This is a ship that's sinking. It's got to the point where one of the businesses were actually injecting money into the sinking ship, where it was getting to the point I can't be making money with this business to put into that one. This one's it's not feasible anymore. It's sinking. And we can't just patch it up with the cash flow from this into this. And there wasn't even enough to cover it because the hole was so big. Right? So you go down with the ship, or or you gotta jump out, right? And that's kind of what it was. Jumping out, right? Instead of bankruptcy, it's called like consumer proposal, but basically affects you very similarly. Past clients seem to hate you. You owe a bunch of people money. You can't get a credit card for like 7 years, or maybe a little less, but it affects your credit score for 7 years. Bunch of different stuff, right? You got to let go of your pride, right? You feel like you let down parents and family and everyone that you're supporting. You feel like you were helping to support them, and you can't even support yourself now. So it's one of those things. How do you bounce back from that? Well, exactly what I'm telling you. If you don't identify with being a failure, well, now you're not stuck to it. When you're not thinking, the next day it was a gym that I owned, and had to clear out a bunch of stuff overnight, basically just take everything out at night and take all the gym equipment and anything else that I could sell, or else it's getting locked in the door when I put on a sign saying, sorry, you're out of business. It didn't actually say that, but it had a little bit more of a personal touch, but that's basically what it said. I had to explain to five employees at the time. You guys have no place to work anymore. You're going to have to find a new place because this business doesn't exist anymore. I just came back from, dealing with whoever deals with this type of stuff. I forget what their actual title is. But he said, basically, you're going to have to tell your staff, and if you want to try and salvage any of your equipment, then get a moving truck, and go in at night and take as much stuff as you can. At the time, I think I literally put down like 15 grand or about like 15 grand worth of turf on the floor. A bunch of that stuff, all the leasehold improvements had to stay in the facility that I was leasing, or else the landlord just kind of takes it. He's going to take it and they'll just liquidate it and try and get as much cash as they can, because I was in on a lease agreement for that whole year, right? And this is the maybe 4.5 years of being in business with this, or actually out of space, 4.5 years. Maybe 5 years in total, if you want to say from ground up. I literally started it at my house. But it's, again, if you look back at all the memories and all this, then you get attached to it. You get attached to it. You stick to it. Oh, I remember when this was at just the infancy stage, my little baby, this business. And so it's that attachment that we get stuck to it, right? Attachment, you're sticking to it. Right? You want to know how you bounce back. Well, we can't stick to it, right? If I dwell on it, then I'm not present. If I'm not present, I can't take new action, and the new action needs to be taken. Otherwise, I'm taking no action, and I'm just stuck in my head. Woe was me, woe was me. Looking for someone to blame. Looking for someone to feel sorry for me. Right? It's a very disempowered way to live. Bouncing back requires that you empower yourself. Otherwise, you can't bounce back. You just get stuck. You get stuck because you have no power. So we have to empower ourselves. And you empower yourself in the present moment. The present moment is where you find the power. That's where the power is. All the power is in the present moment. So if I'm stuck in my memory, which is in the past, I'm disconnected from my power. So I didn't stay there for too long. Maybe a half a day. Maybe a half a day. But it was, again, like, it was at that point, it was, oh, well, okay, well, what do I do now? I literally had 3 businesses a week ago, and now I have 0. Right? So, again, you can only make decisions when you're present, in the present moment. Otherwise, what you'll find is you start just doing past, future, and this is overthinking. Because then you start saying, well, I can't start another business because I just messed up 3. So my next business, that's going to be a failure. And that's what I mean about recreating failure. We're taking something from the past, a failure from the past, and you're recreating it in the future, essentially. Your future becomes your past failures, with the identification to the failure, with the dwelling on the failure. If you feel like a failure and you're thinking that you've already failed and you think that failure is your destiny, then you're going to think like a failure, feel like a failure, and you're going to fail more. That's just how it goes down. But see, that's only being created when I'm stuck in my past. So we have to be present. We have to become aware when we are actually thinking about the past. Right? What did you learn from the failure? Okay, I learned this. That's why I said find the success in the failure. What was good? What did you learn? And then move on. That's it. Be done. It's got nothing else for you. Right? As long as you keep on attaching yourself, oh, failure, you're nurturing that thing, right? You're making it a home for yourself. Right here, come on, let me make you a home. You keep feeding it. What do you want now, past failure? I'll feed you. It's gonna feel bigger. When you focus on things, the more you focus on it, the bigger it feels. If I keep on focusing on that failure, that's all I can see. I'm literally in this present moment, but I'm not really present because I'm so focused on a past failure. So it's really all I'm thinking about is the failure. Right? I didn't bounce back that way. Bounce back, okay. Thank you, failure. What did I learn? What can I extract from it? What was the success that I can extract from it? Okay. Awesome. Present moment. Now what do I do? I can either start something new, another business, or I can pull out my old resume from a long time ago, 5 years before I got into entrepreneurship, and start applying to wherever, Tim Hortons, Best Buy. That's how I had that decision literally on the table. What do I do? When I started another business, right? Which means I didn't bring all that past failure with me. I didn't use that past failure as my reference of decisions. I didn't go, hey, what should I do now? And then I go and ask the failure, hey, failure, what do you think I should do? What? I'm going to fail again? Really? Well, if you say so, that would be using your failure to then make your decisions. You have to make decisions that are unbiased from that failure. Otherwise, that failure seems to be making all the decisions, and you're now making decisions out of fear instead of love. And you find that yourself, when you actually are making decisions out of fear instead of love, you find that you're always feeling constricted, feeling very heavy, very contracted. Feels like you're very unclear. The decision's very unclear. There's always a lot of doubt, worry, stress. That's how you know when you're making decisions from fear. Lack of success. I didn't get success for those 3 businesses. How can I get success for the next one? Lack. It's not going to happen. Can't succeed. Entrepreneurship is not for me. Business, I'm no good at business. I'm no good at anything while I'm at it, right? But that's not. You can't do that. That would be getting stuck to the failure, right? So bouncing back is, here's the present moment. And then again, you can't make decisions based off of your memory. Otherwise, you're just going to recreate it, or you're going to be enslaved by your memory. And that's really like what most people do, is when they fail, is you either bounce back or you're controlled by that failure. That failure is going to crush your dream. Right? You had a dream of whatever it was. And no, it's not happening. Sorry. It's not going to happen. Right? Failure got the best of me. This business is not cut out for me. No way. Throw in the towel. Right? Why? It's because we're going back to our past, going back in our memory, and we're making all the decisions based off of that memory. And we're just recycling our memory. It's not new, but what's new is the present moment. So what I did, I just made the decision based off of the present moment. And I could feel what felt right to me and what felt wrong. And based off of, like writing redoing, like digging up a resume and editing something, that I didn't, have my heart into, working at Tim Hortons or Best Buy and just doing that. I'm like, nah, like I've got a passion to share. I've got skills to deliver that passion. I want to help people. There's a pure intention behind it. I want to help people through sharing my passion. And that's what I can do in entrepreneurship. So at the time, I couldn't really do that at Tim Hortons. I couldn't do that at Best Buy. So that felt like it was very constricting. Felt like it was very contracted. Felt like it was very heavy. Felt like it was very limiting. It felt like fear. And I knew that's not the decision. Right? But again, it takes a level of awareness to feel like what that feels like. And a lot of times when you have that failure, there's the failure, and right beside the failure is the fear. And then we find ourselves really living in that place of fear. Because it's always this fear of the unknown. And then we start projecting a future by saying, oh, well, there's going to be more failure to experience, and I'm afraid of failure, and that doesn't really, I don't want to experience that again. So you know what? This whole entrepreneurship thing, let me just go get a 9-to-5. That could have been how it is, but I'm saying that only happens when you're reliving your past. That only happens when you're focusing on the failure. That only happens when you're identified as a failure. See that again, that all successful entrepreneurs experience failure at some point in their life. Anyone, doesn't even require to be an entrepreneur, anyone who's successful had to have failed. It doesn't come any other way. It doesn't have to be a huge failure. I'm not saying that it has to be the biggest failure, but there's failure. It's just, that's the nature of life. You don't experience just one side of the coin all the time. There's pain and pleasure, right? Night and day, up and down, left and right. That's how you experience things. Duality. Success and failure. It's no different. But our mind just wants to experience the success. We don't want to experience the failure. And that's exactly what I said at the start of the video, is when we fear failure, we're actually fearing success. When I'm afraid to fail again, what that actually is I'm actually afraid to succeed. I can accept failure. I accepted that failure. I can accept another failure. I can accept another failure. And because I can accept failure, I can also accept success. In order to accept success, you have to be willing to accept failure. You can't become successful without accepting that there's failure in it. Just like you can't accept success if you're not willing to accept the risk. So a lot of these things, identification, dwelling on the past, shifting your focus from failure to the present moment, being present, those are some tips to help you bounce back from failure. Because it's not fun being stuck. It's one of those things where it feels like your thoughts are like haunting you. It's your memory. It's the past. So they say the past is dead. It's the dead that's haunting you. Right? You've heard that before. The past is dead. It's gone. It's over with. It's done. It's dead. But then as long as you're stuck in the past, then you always feel like you're being haunted by your failures. You're not living life that way. You can't be enjoying life like that, right? So you find that once you become aware that you're actually doing those things, identifying as the failure, thinking about the failure, focusing on the failure, being attached to the failure, using the failure to make decisions here and now, living life from a place of fear, then you start seeing it. You start seeing it. When you start seeing it, then you can let go of it. Because we hold on to the past. We're holding on to that failure. We have to let go of it. We have to let go of it. You can't hold on to it. Because if the failure is something that you're holding on to it, then you're bringing that failure from the past into the present moment. And if it's here in the present moment, well, it starts destroying this moment and it starts destroying any sort of future for you. So hopefully, just being aware of those things can help you. If you've gone through failure, then you can see that, yeah, those similar things helped you bounce back. Maybe it was fast, maybe it was long. If you just experience failure, hopefully this can help you bounce back fast. And it goes for failure in business or failure in relationships or failure in any aspect of life. It's those same principles. And that's why it's actually very fitting that we use the word bouncing back from failure. Because, like I said before, is if we're not bouncing back, it's because we're stuck. And most people say that we're stuck in the past. So that's the clue that if you feel like you haven't bounced back from the failure, become aware that you're spending time thinking about that failure, which means that you're stuck in the past. And you're stuck to it, not because it's got a hold of you, but actually because you have a hold of it. You're holding on to it. So in order to bounce back, you have to let go of that failure. You have to let go of whatever it was that you thought you were creating or thought that you wanted to experience. You have to let go of all of that. You have to let go of the old to experience the new. Right? And it's holding on to stuff is something that we do. Letting go is something that we don't do. Letting go is a result of not holding on. So then hopefully this video is making you aware of things that you're holding on to. And a lot of times what we're holding on to when the failure is very fresh is how things could have been. Is when we have a business fail, it's the business was the means of financial security or financial freedom or happiness for you or happiness for your family, support for employees, all that type of stuff. And then that one thing just crumbled. So then all those other things. So it's not just the holding on to the business, but it's holding on to all those other things, all those other ideas. Because that's what kind of happens is it's when the business fails, yeah, the business fails, but it's also all of the dreams that you're holding on to. It's the ideas of the future. It's the dream that you're holding on to. That's why it hurts so much, because it's all these future projections about how life could be. And then once that failure kind of happens, then it's like, oh. So then it forces you to really let go of that. But the nice part is once you actually let go of how you think things should be, well, life can kind of bring you something better, something that you couldn't have imagined. And that's the magical experience of life, that in order to experience something that you've never expected, you have to let go of all your expectations. So you can see that there's this holding on to expectations of how things should be, but then there's a crumbling of the thing that was in the plan to get those expectations. So that's what failed. But now there's still an attachment to all those other things. So then there's now this holding on to all those expectations that are now just like memories now. And that's the thing that we hold on to. That's the thing that we're stuck to. But that's in order to bounce back, we have to free ourselves from those memories. We have to free ourselves from all the things that we're holding on to. And that's the hard thing, because all the things that all the expectations and the conclusions and assumptions and ideas of how life should be, well, we imagined all of it and it's all known to us. So if I let go of that, I find myself in this void, this unknown space. Like, what now? And that's the part that's very scary for a lot of us. So instead of actually letting go of those things and experiencing that unknown, what most of us do is we just hold on to it. But holding on to it just creates more and more unhappiness, more and more struggle, more and more stress, more and more dissatisfaction, disappointment, frustration. But if we actually just stop holding on, then we can just experience this unknown. It's not nearly as bad as trying to hold on to something that's making you unhappy and something that's causing us to live in this place of fear. Because on the other side of that fear, that unknown, you'd rather hold on to all those memories because we don't want to experience the unknown because we're afraid of that fear. But on the other side of the fear is actually everything that you want. But you never really, it's everything that you want, but it wasn't everything that you imagined. It's like what your heart actually wanted. And everything else was all this, something that your mind wanted. But what you actually wanted, your heart always knew. And this is a long kind of process. I'm obviously just kind of summarizing it down to making it seem like it's one event. But I'm kind of creating that summary of that longer journey to help you let go. To help you let go that it's not over. It's not over. It's not the end. It's not the end of the world. It feels like it's the end of the world. It's just the end of your expectations. It's just the end of your dream. And what do usually people say? I could have never imagined this. I could never have dreamed this to come true. This was beyond my expectations. That's what people say. Never has someone said, this is exactly how I dreamt it. This is exactly how I expected it to be. No one says that. It's always, this is far better than my dreams. I could never in a million years imagine this to be reality. Right? They say that. So it's a pointer to see that it's okay to let go of that stuff. At the time, it feels like it's letting go, and like it's like there's a lot of fear of letting go, and that's because it shows you how strong the attachment is to those things. Because our ego really it's all those ideas and concepts and expectations and conclusions about life and what our life needs to look like. It's very much how our ego creates its own identity. It's what it's made of, just a bundle of thoughts and feelings. But that needs to kind of fall away, crumble, be to let go in order for something new to replace it, you could say, for a new identity. And that's how, when you're experiencing these tremendous failures in life, it very much feels like it's a death. It feels like there's a death. It could be very much feel like an ego death. Because if you were so attached to a business or some sort of thing that's a result of the business, and that's what you've invested all of your energy into, and all of your ideas and all that stuff, your feelings, all this stuff, then that's basically that's you. You believe that that's you, essentially. That's your whole like reality. So it starts feeling like your world is kind of falling apart. Your reality is crumbling. Who you think you are starts to fall into a million pieces. But out of that, there's also a rebirth. It's like oh man. I'm forgetting the bird here, but out of the ashes. Yeah, out of the ashes, right? Or you can say, let's forget that because I forget the bird. But it's very much like it's a transformation that's happening. You're no longer the caterpillar. You're becoming a butterfly, and it's that kind of phase in the middle where there's the transformation, where it's in this cocoon, and it feels like a very dark and lonely, stuck place, right? But that's where there's a transformation happening, because in order for you to transform, you have to go within and you have to start seeing things that I'm pointing to. And if you actually start going within, that's when there's transformation that happens. And you start realizing the stuff that I'm talking about. And I'm sharing this with you. It's direct experience. And anyone that's gone through tremendous failure, they would start nodding their head that, yeah, it kind of it felt like I was dying. Yeah, it's very much if it's not an ego death, then it's very much a big wound to the ego. It'll bruise your ego, right? It'll bruise the ego. That's why they say failure makes you humble, right? Is because when you don't have all that pride, and the pride is falls away, there's humility left, right? All the things that you don't know, right? So anyways, before we continue to make this video longer than what it needs to be, hopefully shared some of this stuff that can help you if you've gone through failure and you're in the process of bouncing back. Hopefully this gives you just a little bit more, I don't want to use the word like reassurance, but I don't want to use the word hope. Guidance, and the feeling that you aren't alone, because it very much feels like you are alone and you are stuck and you're lost when you experience these tremendous failures in your life. So it's just sharing that to help you realize that you aren't alone and you're not stuck and you're not lost. And this is just part of the process. And the more you can let go of everything that you know, then there is a transformation that happens. So simply just let go. Let go so that you aren't stuck. Let go so that you can bounce back.